Welcome everyone. The webinar will begin shortly and will be recorded. Connect with the campaign for grade level reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account at Reading by Third. Please use hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learned from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. Once again, we would love to connect. So on Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account at Reading by Third. The webinar will begin shortly. It will be recorded and shared with you afterwards. Okay, once again, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I will be behind the scenes helping to produce this conversation. I have just a few housekeeping details before we get started. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself, so please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure when responding to select both panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box. We will dedicate the last portion of the conversation to respond to the questions you post. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed on Friday to all who registered. And we are also live streaming this session on Facebook. Finally, we'll be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during Q&A and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. Finally, before we start, I would just like to call your attention to our upcoming GLR Learning Tuesdays webinars, including times in this earlier 12:30 p.m. Eastern time slot and in our regular 3 p.m. time slot as well. Later today, we will have a conversation on the kindergarten exodus, discussing why, where, and what we can do. Next week, we will be kicking off October with another doubleheader with a special Funder to Funder conversation that acknowledges the emotional trauma and daunting challenges of the many layered disasters affecting communities across the country in the 12:30 time slot. Later that day, we will have another session in partnership with Education Week and the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy, lifting up the foundational nature of trauma-informed practices in the construction of the deep reading brain at 3 p.m. on October 5th. Lastly, on October 12th, we invite you to join our next Crucible of Practice Salon webinar at the 12:30 p.m. time slot as well, highlighting the reading success by 4th grade in Springfield, Massachusetts. Registration links for these upcoming sessions will be posted in the chat box. Joining you now is Jenny Atkinson, Senior Consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you so much, Sierra, and I'd like to welcome all of you to today's peer exchange learning conversation. These webinars are designed to highlight thematically framed conversations among communities, partners, and other stakeholders around the latest work they're doing to slow, stop, and reverse learning loss and advance the early school success prospects of children from economically challenged families, neighborhoods, and communities. Our goal is to lift up what is learned, what communities and partners are doing, and how they're doing it, as well as what they've learned and how they intend to apply what they've learned for ongoing success. We believe that sharing our challenges and successes and gathering in conversation will lead us all to do better work, get better faster, and grow to do this work at scale. During GLR Week in July, we heard about a bold initiative at the Patterson Foundation in the Suncoast region of Florida, focused on digital equity. During that webinar, the Digital Access for All team talked about the importance of 3 essential elements of digital access: devices, connectivity, and skills and supports. They discussed their program to train community partners to be digital navigators, providing support to those in their community. We also know that many local campaign for grade level reading sponsoring coalitions stepped up and played critical roles in ensuring that our youngest learners had devices, connectivity, and ongoing support so that they could engage in learning and development during the last year and a half. These efforts were aimed at accelerating progress and sustaining momentum toward closing the digital divide, which had existed prior to the pandemic. And we know we have more to do to tackle the systemic inequities in digital access on an ongoing basis, long after the immediate state of emergency created by the pandemic ends. As we are emerging from this period of time that demanded immediate reaction and responsiveness on the part of community leaders, partners, funders, and coalitions, we want to take time for reflection on what we have learned and done. As a follow-up to the Bringing Digital Access Home, the Suncoast Digital Access for All Initiative webinar in July. Today's webinar will be a deep dive follow-up to hear about this work in other communities. In today's discussion, Ensuring Digital Access, how CGLR communities are addressing the digital divide, we will hear from presenters in 5 communities across the Campaign for Grade Level Reading Network, who will talk about digital access efforts in their communities, how they've responded to the need that's been made more visible during the pandemic, and what they've learned in the process. Don Gerundo, Community Development and Engagement Director of Education at the Valley of the Sun United Way, and Tim Valencia, the Youth and Education Director with the City of Phoenix, will talk about the work they've done in Phoenix and Avondale, Arizona, read on Arizona communities. We'll also hear from Craig Barnum, the Executive Director of Digital Literacy and Information Technology with Cedar Rapids Community Schools in Iowa. Amy Ahrens Terpstra, Vice President of Collective Impact Partnerships at the United Way of Salt Lake, and Becca Carter, Title I Pre-K Instructional Specialist with the Virginia Beach City Public Schools. So I'd like to start by introducing Becca. Becca's as I said, the Title I Pre-K Instructional Specialist with the Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and has a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies, a master's in early education, and an EDS in Educational Administration and Supervision from Old Dominion University. Previous to her current position, she worked as an instructional technology specialist and a first grade teacher. Her passions include educational equity and technological innovation. So we're going to kick things off with Becca. Welcome, Becca.
Hello, everybody. As Jenny said, I'm from Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and I'm the pre-K instructional specialist. But prior to this position I'm in now, I was an instructional technology specialist at Virginia Beach's pre-K through first grade school. So I was the technology specialist when schools closed, and I had to figure out how to get 600 4, 5, and 6-year-olds into virtual learning. So that was a very interesting experience for me, and I feel like I have a lot of knowledge on how to help our students navigate these crazy times in education. Before I talk about how we responded to COVID, I wanted to kind of give you some background history on technology in Virginia Beach. So since 2014, Virginia Beach City Public Schools has had an instructional technology specialist in every single one of their schools. This person provides coaching and supports to teachers and students. So that really helped us to get our teachers where they needed to be for this situation. We started our one-to-one initiative with digital devices in 2017 or in 2015, and we completed that goal in 2017. So since 2017, all of our students, K through 12th grade, have had access to Chromebooks, and our preschool students have iPads. We started doing virtual learning days in 2017 on staff days. And also we did them on some weather closing days where we provided asynchronous instruction for students. And that really helped us when we had to rethink how we are going to deliver instruction with the school closures, because our students already had experience with asynchronous instruction and virtual learning days. Next slide, please. So we were in a pretty good situation when we had to deal with the school closures. We already had our one-to-one devices. And then our next step was to ensure that all of our families had internet access. So Virginia Beach City Public Schools provided hotspots to any students who didn't already have internet. And then we also provided a list of resources for families, including Cox Cable, which is our local internet service, and how you could get internet for $9.99 a month as long as your student qualified for free or reduced lunch. So we were able to share resources like that for families. And we had 100% of our students in Virginia Beach City Public Schools with internet access. We also provided tech support, including a website and instructional videos of how to access all of our different resources. We use Schoology as a learning management system, and we had already been using that for years before the school closures. But for parents who were not as familiar with the learning management system, we had all kinds of videos of how to access the resources and use the different programs available. And then we also had parent connection meetings, which were virtual parent information sessions on various topics relating to virtual learning. And that would give parents an opportunity to ask questions to help support their students from home. Next slide, please. So I've included a link to our internet access support site, just in case you were interested in seeing what we created for our families. In addition to this internet access support site, we also had a help desk number that was available to staff members and families, in which they could call and get some quick information, say they couldn't log into their Zoom or something was going on with their device. They could call that number and get assistance. And then we also had a building that they could bring their device to if it wasn't working, to exchange it for another one in case theirs was broken. Next slide, please. And what have we learned? So our district has always valued technology and innovation, thankfully, because as I stated, we were really in a good position to handle the school closures. And we're going to continue to place that value on technology and innovation. And in doing that, we're going to continue to promote blended learning opportunities for our students. We know that technology is not going anywhere. And in Virginia, our highest demand for jobs is in computer science. So we will continue doing what we've been doing for years and providing opportunities for our students to participate in blended learning. And we are going to continue to provide asynchronous learning opportunities for students and teachers, regardless if schools are opened or closed. We've learned to be flexible, to persevere. We've learned compassion for our students, the value of innovation, and above all, equity. I'm thankful to be in a district that really made sure that we were addressing the digital divide years ago by providing one-to-one devices for all of our students. And that's just a quick overview of what Virginia Beach City Public Schools did in response to COVID-19 and our school closures.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that great overview of the work that you all did and for kicking us off in this conversation. Next, we're going to hear from Don Gerundo and Tim Valencia. I'm going to just let you know a little bit about them before I turn it over to them. Don Gerundo received her Bachelor's of Liberal Arts in Early Childhood Education and Business Management from Charter Oaks State College and has 34 years of experience working in education. She's been working as a Community Impact Director for Valley of the Sun United Way. She's a strong advocate for education with a passion for early childhood. Dawn is involved in working on breaking the cycle of poverty for children and families in Maricopa County. Her professional interests focus on school readiness, early literacy, and community family engagement. And her current projects include facilitating Read on Avondale, serving on the executive committee for Read on Phoenix, and leading early grade and school readiness initiatives for Valley of the Sun United Way. She oversees all of the Valley of the Sun United Way funding partnerships through contracts and grants for children. Tim Valencia currently serves as the Youth and Education Director with the City of Phoenix, where he works closely with the Mayor, City Council, City Management, education institutions, and businesses in ensuring city resources are aligned along the education continuum to improve student outcomes. He is currently responsible for several education citywide programs and initiatives. Tim started his career managing several citywide programs that targeted resources and services for youth. His professional experiences include managing citywide programs in early childhood education, juvenile diversion, school attendance, grade level reading, community youth center management, after school, college access, and youth workforce development. He's a former 5th grade teacher and family therapist where he provided crisis de-escalation and counseling services. Welcome, Dawn and Tim.
Good morning and thank you. I am so excited to be here and to have Tim with me as we partner in so many things. And you are going to hear us go back and forth together to how we really looked together as mighty change with our digital divide, bringing our read-on communities to collaborate together to build the strategies addressing the digital inequities. We knew that it was becoming very, very reactive and we needed to do something about it. So immediately we set off to figure out what was best and what did it really mean. So next slide, please. Our true introduction to the problem, we brought on Dr. Alex Kurtz from Arizona State University that works with United Way to really look at this problem. The digital divide represented an urgent concern that continues to grow in light of the current pandemic. It is reinforcing the existing social inequities between various social economic groups. The digital divide restricts access and the use of information and community technologies necessary to be successful, participate in a more remote learning and work environment. We know that this was in existence before the pandemic, so making sure that we know that this is what flushed it to the top and why we chose to look at our research-based framework, which you're going to see on the next slide. When Dr. Kurtz looked and did some research on it, he started to look at these 4 tiers, and we knew digital divide was more than just not having access. So what did it look? So no different than you heard shared earlier before, we broke it down into the 4 pillars based on the research. So the experiential area was the offering the individuals exposure to the internet and to help them build an interest. A lot of families didn't even know how to use technology and what does it mean? And that is the very basic understanding and overcoming of technology as it relates to anxiety and many other features. I think back to me having to show my father how to use the internet and what that looks like. We know a lot of our families were experiencing that as well. And then we looked to the next phase is around the material, and that was to provide individuals with the needed information and community technology. Not everybody had access. We were not one-to-one devices across our county. There were several schools that had very limited technology and others had more. It was interesting when we learned from surveying that what we thought was the answer was the fact that we probably didn't answer but ask all the right questions. So that was that second layer that we had to figure out. And then as we started to get technology into the hands of individuals, we start to look at what's really next. And that's the skill, and to develop individuals' digital knowledge and skills to understand that basic use and how it's available with that technology. Even some of our educators needed training and assistance to be able to run the platforms and or multitask and use multiple platforms at one time. And that last stage, and I would add that I think we're still fully there and got lots of work to do, is around that usage. Now that we have technology in place with some of our families and we've built on some of the skill sets, now it's to really utilize the digital knowledge and skills that will build to success and accomplish certain tasks and demands. So using it to its fullest potential. So from that, we found on the next slide, there were lots of opportunities. There were so many tech companies out there with funding. Everybody was trying to react to the problem. There was collaboration and ask and spending repetitiveness. There was addressing the affordability of services. We too used the Cox to Connect because it was very reliable and easy for some of our families. We knew that there was an opportunity around adult learners, specifically job seekers in need of basic literacy skills. We learned that we needed to engage IT professionals as tech mentors and resources to educators and families. There was plenty of opportunity to reach our seniors. Digital inequities is not just children and parents, it's our seniors as well. It impacts our low income, our low education individuals, and individuals experiencing homelessness, and our refugee population. Another opportunity was to support the disconnected communities that were not necessarily K-12. And how did that work? So what you'll see now is what Valley of the Sun United Way's response was during the COVID pandemic. On the next slide, please. Oh, I apologize. We had the needs, and the big need was that affordability, robust broadband internet services, internet-enabled devices to meet the user's need, access to digital literacy training, that was huge, quality technical support, and applications for online and content designed to encourage self-sufficiency, participation, and collaboration. No different than most of you, a lot of our programs are things that our families truly needed, all went electronically. How do I renew my food stamp application? Online. How do I apply for childcare? What do I do? And how does this work? So this was a new area for most of our families. Okay, so now we'll go on to what Valley of the Sun United Way did. Next slide, please. We quickly deployed what we called a technical support hotline for our partnering schools and family districts. We utilized the expertise of our community partners, corporations, and asked them to help us to step up and be that hotline for our families. Help with those basic needs. Connect families with the tools they needed. Explain to families that maybe when they called in, the reason their internet was disconnected was because they weren't charging the hotspot. Showing them how to connect to the network and or the hotspot. Things that our community partners could do that would help leverage more time for our school districts, because they were inundated with having to help teachers and learning what platforms were working and finding out updates and all of those things. We have a whole white paper that we have done on this, and it will be shared in the chat room for you to download as well, the success to this. What one of the districts came back and said was, wow, all of a sudden I was able to work on things to help the teachers because the community was helping the families, and it was that time to come together. We mapped community partners and determined those landscapes and gaps. We'll convene these partners more in the upcoming months to discuss United Way's role and our support. We partnered with the Phoenix Chamber to refurbish laptop distribution. We did a community-wide collection of what laptops, turned them over to the Phoenix Chamber, and then we were able to get those out for distribution. We, as a United Way, funded 30 community partners, school and out of school time programs, and youth programming and technology. We knew our students needed a place to be. And if they were going to schools, did school need funding for training or more technology or to increase their internet? Did they need the capacity to be able to fund children that were there under essential care? Our out of school time partners opened their doors to safe learning environments when children had nowhere else to go. We as a United Way felt it was important to make sure that these were safe and healthy, nurturing environments during this time. We connected to school with out of time partners to provide those safe places and virtual learning environments. We convened out of school time partners to identify additional supports during this time. We worked together to help develop a map for the Phoenix Union Partnership and out of school time opportunities in their areas as their teachers were transitioning back into the classroom. We knew that teachers may have let go of some of their childcare for themselves, and they needed this to be able to go back to in-person learning. So we worked with corporations and we mapped that out to make the ease and access for those teachers. We continue to maintain consistent communications with our school districts and fully understand the support and their needs. And lastly, I want to share, we thought outside the box. A lot of you heard of Wi-Fi's on the buses, where they went in and had Wi-Fi's come in and provide school lunches and families could connect at that time. We worked with Khajiit and we deployed 6 community Wi-Fi's across the Southwest Valley. And what we found was, instead of putting them on buses, we found locations where families could come and comfortably convene for hours. A great example is we found a church that was willing to turn on that Wi-Fi every day and be able to convene the parents right there in the parking lot or in the grass area, and they would all have connectivity. We were able to connect up to 65 individuals at one time. One of the districts looked to see that they had 6 families in one apartment complex that were on their handed out Wi-Fis. Instead, they took the community Wi-Fi, put it into the community center where families could sit outside of their apartments, and actually most of them could actually access from inside their apartments to be able to do Wi-Fi, which leveraged 6 more that could go to other families. So it was a unique and innovative process that we did, but it was the ability to bring community together. And now I want my partner, Tim Valencia, to share what all the City of Phoenix did, because we have worked hand in hand to make sure that we weren't duplicative and that we can go further together. So Tim, take it away.
Thank you, Dawn. As Dawn stated, we work closely together in sharing of resources, sharing of knowledge that we had through different surveys and whatnot, so we weren't duplicating services. But the one thing that we did here at the City of Phoenix on the onset of the pandemic is we knew we had this existing digital divide. We knew that our schools needed technology. Our issue is that we have 29 school districts in just the City of Phoenix alone, and we didn't want to inundate them with survey after survey on their needs. And so we worked closely with Dawn and United Way and the Arizona Department of Education, because they had sent out surveys asking the needs of our districts. Well, what we found after we went ahead and sent out another survey was that this digital divide was a constant moving target. It constantly moved. So a school district could need 500 laptops today, but tomorrow need 1,000 because whatever happened over the weekend, they had some return. So we knew it was a moving target in trying to get laptops in the hands of students. So what we did is we conducted a focus group with key partners, which included our superintendents, on their needs and the type of devices that they needed. We knew we had to move quickly with the funding that we had and existing contracts the City of Phoenix did. So there were certain items that we could not buy, like Apple products and even Chromebooks. So that's when I worked with Dawn, and the work she did was to really look at those districts that I could not provide laptops to, just based on the type of laptops they needed. And so that was the constant communication that we had with our key partners. So we decided that we reached out to some of our key partners, and one of a local nonprofit here called School Connect, which works with faith-based organization, matched our donations. So we were able to get 5,000 laptops purchased within the City of Phoenix with CARE Act funds, and they matched it with an additional 5,000 laptops that also went into schools that we could not purchase, like Chromebooks and whatnot. So it was about a collaborative effort to meet the needs of the school districts, but it was about getting that information that was needed on what their needs were. We knew also within the City of Phoenix that we had internal programs that we needed to take care of, especially for students that access technology. We purchased in our housing facilities for families and students tablets for them to access any platform needed for schools. We bought plenty of laptops and tablets for our libraries for families and students to check out, and internal programs like tutoring programs and our kindergarten boot camp, experience core. We bought tablets to ensure when we went to virtual learning and virtual programming that our families still had contact and that ability to participate in our program. So we wanted to make sure as seamless as possible that technology was in their hands, but Dawn and her group were there to also provide that technical support, that professional development whenever we needed, because we knew we all had special expertise and we had to figure out who was able to deploy that special expertise. We knew in our community, City Council and our mayor here in Phoenix knew that, and we've known for years that we have this huge digital divide, but we had many communities in which did not have Wi-Fi access. So we increased our Wi-Fi access in 50 community centers and libraries that reached out to the community. So we knew that we were extending our Wi-Fi capabilities to the most neediest communities in the city. We also knew that early childhood education, which our mayor, Mayor Kay Gallego, is passionate about, that our childcare facilities also needed assistance. And so we released mini grants to childcare facilities to in low and moderate census tracts for whatever they needed for technology. So we wanted to make sure that they were taken care of as well. One of our biggest projects that the city of Phoenix, along with our largest urban high school district, Phoenix Union, 13 elementary school districts, and even a local community college, Phoenix College, is our community wireless network project. And so over the course of CARE Act funds and ARPA funds, the city has really invested more than $20 million towards the digital divide. But this network project that we're working on, they did a beta testing in Cartwright and Elementary, 2 school districts here, to really look at how we could install this beta testing Wi-Fi, community Wi-Fi free, and then of course expand it. So recently, the city of Phoenix approved another $12 million to extend that to a 4-mile radius to get access to for families most in need. And this is free access. Our first stage is a 4-mile radius and 1,000 students that will have access to Wi-Fi. So this is really new to us. It's very exciting, but we know that the investment of ARPA and COVID fund is really this digital divide, especially the wireless project, is one of our best investments just for sustainability and long-term. Now, of course, the city of Phoenix is a 500-mile radius city. However, we're taking it in baby steps, and then we'll just have to look at how we can duplicate this in the future.
Awesome. And, I can't say more than enough. If Tim and I didn't work together, we would have duplicated services. While he had the ability to focus in that urban core, Valley of the Sun United Way could come in and work to fill the gaps or find partners that could. And then as a United Way, we still have to look at all those surrounding cities as well within Maricopa County. It is a very large footprint that we serve. And I don't know how many times a day we would text or ask questions or share each other's surveys, because we knew if we did not work together, we would not be able to get this work done. So it has been exciting. It has been an incredible partnership, and it has given us the ability to leverage so much more. So on our next slide, we're going to talk what we call COVID keepers. And I will have to share, I stole the term from one of my other Read On partners from Tempe, and she said that there were keepers during COVID. And so those are the things that we know that we learned from COVID. And the first one was the digital inequities are more than just students. Our seniors needed our assistance, our refugees needed our assistance, everybody in the community had digital inequities during this given moment. So that was a keeper to us, this is not over. This is the beginning of the journey. And now it's time to keep it up to the top, because as Tim shared, it's about being sustainable. So the effort and the investment that we put forward, how do we sustain it so we would never become in this circumstance again? And then I guess I can't say enough how much the collaboration was key. There was digital inequity teams, there were individuals coming together, trying to figure out what I can do and what I can't do, and how can I help you and how can I not? And this is something that I can't do, but can you do it? It was all of those questions, but if we didn't work together, we would have never gotten as far as we had. We also learned that loaning out equipment was not always the answer. We thought it was, but quickly things came back. They didn't always work again. Or they expired. I mean, we did checkouts for hotspots, and then families needed them longer, and there were families on wait lists. There were all of these things that we learned. Mobile hotspots, they were only a Band-Aid. They worked, they were a Band-Aid, but when we ripped it off, guess what? Those people were without internet again. And as we're in the pandemic still, we're going in and out of being isolated or quarantined, and now we've got to figure out how to get internet back. So while it worked, just acknowledging the fact that it wasn't a full fix. Projects that Tim is doing is something that would be a full fix, where we would have that access to internet at all times. It wouldn't just be during that pandemic. So the city of Phoenix has led that and is doing incredible work there, and we know we can all continue to learn from it. Technology could not always be cleaned or reused. A lot of our districts brought back in the technology over the summer, and sometimes it couldn't be scrubbed or cleaned or reused. And so it had to be disposed of. And what we also we learned is not everybody budgeted for the replacement of technology. We were so busy getting technology in the hands of everybody, we didn't think through the process of making sure we budgeted for a lot of replacement. And I would add, and I think Tim would agree with me, I think the replacement was way more than we had anticipated once we even started to look at that matter. And education needs to be a priority when distributing the equipment. We need to make sure families know how to use it. We did everything that we could. We brought families in the safest way we could to get technology in the hands, but we needed to be better at making sure that we had educational things in place, like our IT hotline, but maybe parent education sessions prior to receiving the equipment to give them some basic knowledge and skills to what does it look like and how does this work. We have professional resources to tap into, such as software training, technical assistance, et cetera, within our communities. We can use our corporations. They will come to the table. We know that some of our corporate partners have been using Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all of the above for many, many years. Let's tap into them and see how they can help us provide trainings for our families, for our educators, and all of the above. And then the biggest thing is the digital divide is not over. It is truly still here, but we have taken a big step into it, and we need to continue to move that work forward. Tim, did I leave anything out? Can you add anything?
No, I definitely agree. You know, with the digital divide not being over, we are here locally thinking, how are we going to continue the discussion and the resources and the availability for families? Now, while we're working on this, you know, 4 square mile radius of a community wireless network, but we know our city is much bigger. We have other areas in the city that could use this free Wi-Fi access. And so it's not over. It's about how do we continue the discussion and keep it sustainable, especially because we know, you know, the way we operate now is different and will be different from this point on with our school districts, with internal with the city and our partners. But how do we address the digital divide in the future?
Thank you, Dawn and Tim, so much for that really comprehensive partnership overview. I was expecting, as I listened to all of the things that you've done for that, you would both look a lot more tired than you do. So very impressive. And I loved your COVID keepers. I think we're going to have a lot of follow-up questions when we get to our Q&A about some of the things you did. So thanks again. Our next presenter is with Cedar Rapids Community Schools. Craig Barnum has worked in education for the last 29 years and has experience teaching elementary, middle school, and high school levels. Craig has served as a central office administrator since 1999 and is currently the executive director of digital literacy and information technology for Cedar Rapids Community Schools. Providing equitable access to digital programming is Craig's professional passion. On a personal level, Craig has been married 26 years to a lifelong educator, and he has 3 children. He's a middling guitar enthusiast and an ardent supporter of all things associated with the University of Iowa. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks, Jenny. So, you know, as a person in my chair, at the end of the day, I say this to all my colleagues, the work that was done over the last 18 months is heroic, but not the exception. We all sort of lived through the same context and did things that were seemingly would have been considered impossible, and did it in a very short amount of time. Just a little bit more about me so you understand the context of where we're going, and I think it'll provide some illumination on what we did here in Cedar Rapids. Was that I started this job just a little over 3 years ago. Came from another position where I was the director of technology at a neighboring school district. It was very comfortable there and no thought of leaving, and came here largely because the district put together a very robust digital learning plan, brand new department. This concept didn't exist in Cedar Rapids before. They had a technology team, but not a digital literacy team. And that's what really got me all jacked up about it. And one of the components of that plan was to take the district, which is the second largest in the state of Iowa, 1-to-1, which now seems completely unextraordinary, but at the time seemed like a really interesting professional challenge. I'll also say that a part of our plan, and this would go all the way back to what Becca was saying in her presentation as well, was that we had a nice run up at this. So we had a couple of years where we were starting. We had already hit 1-to-1 with our high school, and we're just rolling out 1-to-1 with the middle school when the pandemic hit. So we had already sort of started thinking about this. And one of the key aspects of our plan was equity. We certainly recognized that there was a problem and that kids were having different experiences along the way. And so we were already thinking about that a little bit before the pandemic struck. Now, obviously, the urgency got much greater in March of 2020. But at that point, what we really decided to do is it became clear, as I think almost anybody who sits in an education chair, this type of chair, realized that it was a little too big for any single public entity like a school district to handle. And so we went ahead and like so many of the other folks, as Dawn and Tim talked about, we collaborated with a lot of different other folks. So for example, one of the first organizations we reached out to and worked with closely was our public library, our Cedar Rapids Public Library, and did simple things like ensured that every one of our kids had access to their collection with their ID number, the student's ID number. It's a minor thing, but it really does matter. We went ahead as the year went on, and we did get machines for devices, Chromebooks for all of our kids. And it was pretty clear that we had about 30% of our families who weren't going to be connected to the internet. And we had already supplied just under 1,000 hotspots the previous year through a Sprint grant that we'd had previous to the pandemic. But one of the things we discovered really quickly is it's not just about supplying hotspots. And I love the idea that hotspots are a Band-Aid, because I really think that's true. One of the things that we discovered pretty quickly is that it's not just the hotspot, but it's the type of hotspot, and it's the type of access that you're giving that's really essential. The hotspots we were giving out previously had some pretty significant data governance on them. So kids would get, or families would get, 20, 30 gigs of data per month, and then it would govern down significantly and the speeds would be restricted. Well, we learned pretty fast that when you're doing video conferencing like we're doing now, it's not very effective. I mean, you hit that data limit in days, sometimes hours, depending on what you're doing and how many people are doing it. So when we went out and purchased, 3,000-4,000 hotspots to sort of patch through, we made sure that they all had unlimited plans on them because we just couldn't bump into that. But even then, the hotspot provider, you're limited by the data quality and the coverage of where the person is bringing the hotspot. So that's not the best answer either. One of the things I'm most proud of is that we had a nice partnership with a local internet provider, a local company called IMON. I'll give them a shout out right here. And right before I even talked about the derecho. We had a natural disaster strike the city in the summer of 2020 in August, or 2 weeks before school. We had a really significant natural disaster, and I'll talk about that more in a second. But IMON partnered with us through a CARES Act grant that they got, and we were able to provide free in-house wired access with including a wireless router, so that they were bringing in a hardwired connection to that house at about 30 megs of connectivity, which isn't awesome, but it's good. And then a Wi-Fi router, which you could connect, obviously, a lot of devices to. And we served about 300 families with that, which wasn't a huge footprint because their service footprint wasn't great, but it still made a real difference for those families. And we've actually sustained that. We found ways to sustain that, working with them to get a reduced and subsidized cost now that the grant has run out. We paid for all those hotspots largely with CARES or ESSER money. And I think we're going to have serious conversations ongoing about how to sustain that. I mean, I think you heard that from a couple of the other presenters, that sustainability is a real question. I have no question about how we can sustain our device footprint. We have a device for all of our pre-K through 12 children. And we've done the numbers and we feel pretty good about keeping that funding going just through leveraging other services. But the connectivity is a tough one. And I think we're going to have to continue to do that. One of the other things that we really thought a lot about too is beyond working with the ISPs, the libraries, we partnered with the city as well. And this is actually something that goes back a number of years before me. And we ended up sharing the cost of a fiber network around our entire city. So all of our schools share the same fiber footprint as the city has, and we share the cost with the city, county, and the school district. And it's been an incredibly good way to extend infrastructure out from our lens. And we're also having ongoing conversations about with the city about digital deserts within the city, where we've got places that just don't have great access to either cell coverage, data wireless coverage, or where we don't have good broadband coverage. And we're studying that right now, is about how to really bridge that gap. So again, much like Tim and Dawn, these overlap of services really do help when you can find a complementary fit between city and school district. That's been an incredible thing that's helpful for us. One of the other things that I think a lot about, and in fact, really the charter of my team, is not only the type of access we're giving, but why are we doing this at all, right? What's the point of bridging the digital divide? And in terms of my thinking on that, we don't have a lot of time left. I want to honor the time that our additional speakers have, but I'll tell you that's really where I spend a lot of my headspace, is thinking, okay, we've got the tools out there now. How are we pushing them to effect to create opportunities for kids? And I'll give you a concrete example of what our team is trying to do, and we're just at the cusp of doing. And this has been one of the real boons of the pandemic. With ubiquity, with everybody having a device and connectivity, one of the things that we did early on was we made sure that all of our kids had access to accessibility tools like screen readers and text-to-speech tools. I mean, and not just the built-in stuff, but the good stuff, the commercial grade stuff. And what that does for a child is, if you have a kid who is reading a couple of grade levels below, doesn't quite qualify for special ed services, but they read better with their ears than they do with their eyes. And I'm not suggesting that we don't need to teach kids how to read with your eyes, how to decode. But if you have a child who really understands and comprehends text when listened to, and we've got assessments that'll tell us that pretty clearly, this can be absolutely life-changing for kids. And it's a great equity thing, because it really levels the playing field for all of our kids, gives us all a standard platform to play upon, and makes life so much easier for everybody, takes away behavior issues, attendance issues, all of those things. And that's where we're going. We're not there yet in Cedar Rapids. We're aiming to get there. So that's an aspirational goal for us. I did tickle the derecho, so I do want to talk a little bit more about that for maybe 20 seconds before I turn it over here. But on August 10th in 2020, we had a natural disaster called the derecho, which I've lived in Iowa basically my entire life, and I'd really never heard of it. It's essentially a thunderstorm that's produces straight line winds that last for a long time. So in Cedar Rapids, we were hit with a storm of such a caliber that we had about 140 mile an hour winds, which would be about a Category 4 hurricane, for about 45 minutes. It didn't get much national news coverage, which was a little surprising to us here, but it basically decimated the city, took out 60% of our tree canopy, knocked down over 10,000 power poles, left the city without any kind of power for well over a week. And this is about 200,000 people we're talking about. And this was 2 weeks before school happened. All 31 of our attendance centers were significantly damaged. And of course, it does really great things to all that aerial internet service that we had counted upon. So even families that previously had great access didn't have any access for several weeks. So while they called in the cavalry and restored power to most of the city within about a month. It still was 6-8 weeks for some families to restore internet. And we were trying to start school right around that same time. So that was a real significant challenge. And I'll tell you one of the ways we got around that. And again, we muddled like everybody did. But one of the ways we did it was going out and, like I said earlier, partnered with other entities, community groups, churches, other places, tried to find places that did have access, and then put our staff there to ensure that we did have some sense of connectivity so that we could still maintain some sort of sense of social distancing, because the pandemic was still, and still is, but really was, there was no vaccination on the horizon at that point, so that we could, get people together in a space to learn. We also, again, reached out to our business partners in the community and actually did get more hotspots at that point. But again, some of our aerial coverage wasn't great even then, so it was kind of a muddle. But long and short of it, I would just like to say to any educator in the field, that what I'm talking about probably doesn't differ that much from your experience. I would just urge everybody to think, as Dawn said, about your COVID keepers. What are the things that going forward we want to keep doing more of, and use this as an opportunity? I think that's a Chinese proverb: don't let any crisis go to waste. And certainly I would hate to see us do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker and move us on.
Thanks so much, Craig. And I think you're being quite modest about the work you've done there, but it's especially, I think, helpful to hear from someone who's not only a tech expert, but also has an educator lens. So thanks so much for that. And also great to hear about how, unfortunately, one pandemic prepared you for another natural disaster. So hopefully that will be it for you. But it's helpful to hear that this work, lays the groundwork for other issues that may come up. Our next presenter is Amy Ahrens-Terpstra. She's the Vice President of Collective Impact Partnerships for United Way of Salt Lake. She leads the talented team working to cultivate partnerships capable of creating lasting social change in schools, neighborhoods, and across the region. Amy joined the United Way of Salt Lake team in 2016 and focused on building cross-sector regional collaborative action networks that align programs, engage continuous improvement, and change systems in order to improve specific measurable outcomes. For 11 years prior to that, Amy led research and evaluation work at the Chicago-based Heartland Alliance for Human Needs and Human Rights. There she managed a diverse portfolio of applied research studies with people who were experiencing poverty and intense hardship and trauma. For over a decade, she researched and wrote Heartland Alliance's flagship publication, the Annual Report on Illinois Poverty, which informed the work of thousands of providers, advocates, and decision makers in the state. Thanks so much for being with us, Amy, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Good morning or afternoon, I suppose, depending on where you're at in the country. It's wonderful to be here with the campaign today. So our story around digital equity in our partnership in the Greater Salt Lake region is one that I think of in three parts. So the first part of the story is really about how we worked to fill immediate needs that were sort of, right there in our face. And I'll just underscore that we did that very imperfectly, as you'll hear. But that was our first phase, is to fill those immediate needs. The second phase that we pivoted to was really around aligning resources and bringing together the partners in partnership settings to try to meet those ongoing needs more systemically, as we've heard some of our other presenters talk about. And now we're really in this space, as some of the colleagues that we just heard from are talking about, are really working on longer term solutions. So I'll start with that immediate needs. And the helpful background here might be to know that, almost 20 years ago, United Way of Salt Lake really worked hard to refashion ourselves away from primarily a funder and into a collective impact organization. So we really were pushing ourselves to try to solve our community's most pressing social problems. So what that meant for us was that we sort of steadily moved and pivoted away from doing ourselves and funding exclusively programs. We really started to focus and put our eyes towards changing systems to allow for more equitable outcomes. So we really conceived of our work as being like very long range work, generational work you're not often seeing progress on for many, many years. Then the pandemic hits, and suddenly it's really clear that there is just this tremendous need in our community, and that we were kind of uniquely positioned in some ways to really help address it because of the partnerships that we had built over many years. And then the top of that list, or one of the things that was at the top of the list of needs in our community, was access to technology. Our local estimates, although the data was actually quite difficult to get our hands on at the very beginning of the pandemic, but those estimates suggested that between 20 and 50% of kids in our region did not connect to virtual learning when schools went into soft closure in March of 2020. And the primary driver that educators were identifying was not having a device, not having access to the internet. And we learned that a lot of our local districts, they were hustling to address this challenge, but based on resource constraints and based on supply chain issues, many of them were only giving one laptop per family. And we have really big families in Utah. Many families have, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids. And then we were learning that a lot of district policies were, and this is entirely understandable, I guess what I would say is very education focused with the devices that they were giving out to families. Sometimes they were collected over the weekend, they were definitely collected over the summer. There was filters on them that prohibited families from using the device for anything else. And while that makes a lot of sense in an educational context, the broader lens and view of just digital access, digital equity to kind of exist in a 21st century economy, that didn't make so much sense to us. And then I mentioned those supply chain issues. We were just having trouble locally getting all the devices that we really needed to get out to families. So through our relationships with Comcast and with some local tech companies here, we were able to sort of weasel in and bypass some of those supply chain issues and get about 1,500 devices pretty quickly and get them at a steeply discounted price. So we had these devices in hand, and one of the other resources we had at our disposal was our state 211 resource and referral system. So we house that here in our United Way. So we launched an initiative which we called Stay Safe, Stay Connected. We used 211 as the hub for that initiative, and we advertised the heck out of it. We did mass marketing, communications, social media, you name it, we did it. We drove families in our region to call 211 or to go online. If they had a phone or device, they could go on and they could put their name on a list to get a laptop. There was also many other educational resources that they could get through that initiative that I won't go into. But what we did is really took a lens of equity and ease of access for getting these devices out there into the community. We asked like 4 questions, like what district does your kid go to? Are they a K through 12 student? What's your zip code? And maybe one other thing. And we tried to make sure that we were giving one device per family until there was no more requests, and then we would go back and fulfill additional requests from the same family. So that was about all we did in terms of screening, tried to keep that bar of entry really low. We held community pickup events at locations throughout our community that we had learned through conversations with community leaders were easily accessible for people. And then after a couple of weeks of that, we transitioned into going through community-based organizations that were really connected to marginalized communities. And we delivered laptops to them, and then they in turn, they know the needs of community members most intimately, and so they were able to work to get those out to families that needed them. We also experimented with working with community health workers. We funded a few organizations that have community health workers, and we equipped them to do education-related outreach. And so this was sort of instead of coming to us at 211, we're going to come out to you, and we're going to let you know what education and tech-related resources are available to you. And we distributed laptops to community members in our Pacific Island community specifically in that way. So after we sort of went through that initial, like, need to get devices out into the community, let's do it. We also were chipping away at really trying to pull the partners together and do something together more systemically and make sure that we're putting all of our resources together and thinking through how we can maximize them, not duplicate efforts, some of the things other folks have talked about. So we pulled together our school leaders and our civic leaders to put out their challenges on the table. The ultimate kind of upshot and result of those conversations was that our county mayor's office, this is Mayor Jenny Wilson, she gave our 5 school districts in Salt Lake County $10 million in CARES Act funding to meet technology needs in an ongoing way. So districts were then able to use those funds to get additional devices to move to that 1-to-1 ratio of device to students. And then also address the internet access, lots of hotspots and a few other, the buses, all the stuff that you've heard about. And then we just continued to try to fill in gaps where we were hearing that there was a lot of need, and we continued to work through those community-based organizations to do so. We also created a sponsorship agreement with Comcast Internet Essentials. And so we're continuing actually to work through community-based partners to put community members who need internet on our bill, essentially, and pay for their internet for at least the next school year, I believe our contract goes through. We've discovered some issues with that that you might have also experienced in your community. Certain buildings aren't wired for Comcast, they're wired for a different internet provider, lots of gaps or lots of barriers to qualifying or confusion around eligibility, but we do continue and have continued to offer that and have gotten several hundred people connected in that way. Then, the third part of our story here is this long-term view. What are we going to be doing over the course of the next really several years, right, to solve for the bigger issues? The bigger issues, as I see them, really have to do with a few things. The first I alluded to before, but we continue to have a challenge with computer access over the summer when districts are collecting those devices, and they have to do maintenance on them. There's a very logical reason for this, but families are often then left without a computer over the summer. So we want to be solving for that. We haven't solved very well for tech support and for digital literacy in our community. There's certainly good efforts and good programs, but the key question for me is around how do you scale those things? How do they become community-wide assets, and how are they accessible to people across the community? And then we are working with our county to try, as one of our county colleagues says, become the most connected county in the country. One of our local districts did something pretty amazing last summer with a relatively small amount of money. They put, I'm not a tech person, so forgive if people are going to be cringing as I describe this, but they put an antenna on top of every single school district or school building, and they broadcast internet to nearly every single family in their district. I've seen their maps. They literally know which small handful of households the internet's not reaching because of like a hill or a giant grove of trees or a building that's in the way. And then they're kind of, picking off those houses by partnering with the county to put another antenna, on a county building to get to that family. So at any rate, it's innovative. It is relatively sustainable. It doesn't require much of an ongoing cost. And so we're really asking ourselves, how can this be replicated? And how can districts, municipalities, counties, our state's university system, Utah Department of Transportation, which has a big role, how can we all partner to make sure that every home has access to high quality internet? So I'll just end by reflecting, on this, which is, I think the entire pandemic has really caused, certainly me personally and many others that I know in our broader partnership, to look more deeply at root causes. And I would pose that digital inequities and all the work that I just described that we're doing is still a Band-Aid solution. Even trying to get internet access beamed and affordable to all families in our county is still a Band-Aid, because ultimately lack of access to those types of that type of resource in terms of internet or devices it has more to do with not being able to afford a computer and internet than anything else. And so to me, to us, this is really an economic justice issue. And if you really push yourself to go deeper on root causes, it really drives us towards things like wages and safety net supports for families and other things that we know, and quality jobs in the many different ways beyond wages that we know that that term means. So I would just leave us with that reflection that digital inequity is really an economic justice issue as well. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks so much, Amy. I'm struck by a couple of things from what you said, and in particular, I appreciate what you say about root causes and what are the deeper things that we need to address with these issues, but also just, you know, sort of the onion, the layers of the onions, when you think you've solved one issue and then you peel it and you're like, oh wait, you know, the kids have devices for school, but they need devices for life. And so I really appreciate how complicated this work has been for everyone, and how many great solutions people have come up with, you know, in real time, in very quick ways. So thank you again for that. I would like to now welcome all of our presenters back for some Q&A. And if you have a question, please do put it in the Q&A box so that we can see them there and easily go through some of those questions for our presenters. I would like to start off with one that we saw that was focused on public libraries, and just the question of if any of your public libraries have been involved in this work, or have done some of the work to support, you know, pieces that you aren't doing. So if anyone could talk a little bit about how your public libraries are responding to this challenge, that would be great.
I can step in and say that our public libraries have been a huge partner in this work. They have been loaning equipment out, checking equipment out. They've offered safe spots and meal pickups in some of our areas. Again, we are very widespread across Maricopa County, so it looks different. Not only do we have state libraries, we have county libraries, and we have city libraries. But I would say everybody has been at the table, right up to the county being part of the coalition lead around the digital inequities. And I believe, Tim, you shared how we started doing programming online. And I know that the libraries that have funded story times will now stay online even when they start to bring families back, because of the incredible response we found. And we are now starting to meet families where they're at, which is different, and another COVID keeper, right? Some of these things we learned need to stay. And they've been very productive, but our libraries for the most part have been extremely active. Anything else to add, Tim?
No, I agree, Don. So our Phoenix Public Library, they shifted really quick when it came to virtual programming, because they knew they needed to provide outreach and resources to our communities most in need. And Don is exactly right. We increased our tablet and laptop checkout, as well as our mobile Wi-Fi at all our libraries for parents and families to check out. And a lot of the virtual programming will stay in place. It's almost like now a new frontier where we are reaching an incredible amount of individuals who possibly cannot make it or come into a library, but can participate via Wi-Fi. So a lot of our programs are changing, and we are continuing to provide virtual programming based on, you know, the amount of people and families we have reached with our programming. But many of our programs will go back to that hands-on experience, like our kindergarten boot camp, you know, a lot of our school readiness programs within our, you know, within our library system, our Phoenix Public Library. But, you know, we have shifted quickly, and a lot of these programs will stay, as Don said, a COVID keeper.
The other thing I would add is they didn't stop providing access to books. They provided ways for individuals to access them. So there was a lot of drive-through library opportunities where families could go online, reserve a book, and drive up, pick up a book, or drive up and drop a book off. So that was really exciting to see how they all picked up and ran and engaged in all of these items.
And that even went for our programming. So if they participate in one of our library programs, or one of our family resources that my office oversees, we called them, kind of pick up and go or grab bags, where we were offering a workshop, a parent engagement workshop, and the parents would come and pick up the supplies, then take them home so they could work with their child in this particular workshop. So, and those activities will continue.
Great, thank you, Tim and Dawn. Anyone else have something that they wanted to say about their libraries?
I would just echo, I mean, I think you don't have a conversation about digital equity in our region without including the libraries. I think they were on the cutting edge of this work, probably, to be honest, well before many of us were. So they're critical partners, and they were able to the earlier point, really rally incredibly quickly, and they were incredibly nimble about making sure that our community was connected. And I know here locally, they didn't solely have the focus on school children. They were really focused on seniors and other populations too in our community, which can often get overlooked sometimes when we're so laser focused on the educational needs of families and kids.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. So other questions from, I see something coming into the Q&A box. Is there anyone who, well, let me look at that one first really quickly. The greatest challenge in my district is the rural areas. We have students and families who are in a remote enough area they're unable to obtain a signal using a hotspot when they're in their home. Any experiences you have regarding the rural digital divide?
I can chime in. That's where our mobile, our community Wi-Fi's came into play, because while Maricopa County is very large, there are several pockets that are considered rural. So some of our farming community far out in the Southwest Valley, they couldn't get a signal. It just didn't work. Or there would be, as one of the schools shared with me, to take materials to the home, you had to go down the dirt road, past the canal, over past 3 trees, and then all of a sudden out of the blues, you'd see 3 mobile homes and there were children there. So that's where we were able to utilize the strength of those mobile Wi-Fi's, like the ones for the bus, and loan it right there to that small community. And because it was so powerful and strengthful, we were able to draw some internet in compared to if we were just using hotspots and they didn't have a provider. And then, like I said, later on, a community church offered to turn it on and off for them, so that we didn't kill the bus, because we did that a couple of times with the battery. That didn't work out so well. But things that we learned is the power and figuring out how to come together with it.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. So I see in the chat, there's another link to some information about a rural connectivity approach. So thank you, Sharon, for sharing that as well. So a couple of other questions, and actually I would love if you had questions for each other. It seems like some of you have solved some pieces and figured some of the pieces out. So if you had a question you wanted to ask another panelist, please jump in as well on that. But one thing I wanted to hear a little bit about is if there were, what did you learn about closing gaps and lowering barriers that might have broad transference to other areas of the work that you do? Are there some lessons you learned with this initiative that may help with other things you're working on?
Jenny, 2 things come to mind when you ask that question. The first, like the urgency of the moment we found ourselves in March of 2020 and beyond, brought 2 things up for me. One, the data just weren't available to guide us to make all of the types of decisions that we wanted to be data informed about. And that stressed me out a lot. We like to be very data informed in our efforts. But one thing it prompted me as a personal reflection, I think our partnership learning is, like, sometimes you just have to act. You can't let the lack of data be the thing, that you sit around waiting for to take important action. And then that leads to sort of my second conclusion, like, we didn't have all of the right players who I would have sort of handpicked to be in the room when we launched our sort of meet immediate needs phase of our strategy. Everyone was running around trying to figure out which way was up. And so it was hard to get like, let's all take 3 hours to sit together and hash this out and figure out who's doing what in the way that I would have also liked to have done. And what I learned is like, maybe there was a little bit of overlap in the things that different partners were doing while we all got ourselves organized. But I just learned to not stress about that. Like sometimes you just have to act and do, and put the kids and families at the center and ask yourself, like, what's our immediate and then medium term and long term play here, and put some of the deeper alignment work in the medium term space, and in the spirit of putting your community first.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Don, or sorry, you may not. For a minute, I thought you were about to answer. So if you don't
No,
know.
I was just nodding. I totally agree with you, Amy. There were times you just had to let it go. And I would say if there was anything is like, there was room for everybody. Because like, we didn't expect our corporate partners to come to the table to offer to run the hotline for us. It was like a matter of seconds till they're like raising their hands. So knowing that there was room for everybody and just staying in the lanes that we could stay in and giving ourselves grace. We were all running as fast as we could, trying to figure out what to work. And it wasn't easy to get our hands on it or all that data-driven decision-making, but we did it and we're still doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you. Did any of you, are there lessons that you've learned from sort of working with the business community, whether it was around market for devices and connectivity or other issues that have helped you think about ways to partner with the business community in other ways, or continued partnership around these technology issues?
Well, I think for the city of Phoenix, working with businesses and organizations is really for school districts to have their ask ready, and what that is. I don't think schools here locally really, they haven't articulated to businesses what that need is or that ask. So when the pandemic hit, it was like we knew immediately the digital divide existed. Did we know what school districts were already one-to-one technology? Who wasn't? Where were the gaps? So, the pandemic really spearheaded, us finding out what those needs were, where we could say, this school district is already one-to-one. This school district needs 500 laptops to get to one-to-one. So it was about school districts now being ready to have their ask ready. And I think for us, that's the biggest learning. Really the best way we could learn from this process was school districts need to be ready to ask what their needs are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I would say the other thing is we learned there are other volunteer opportunities for our business partners. We can find other opportunities to connect them in ways that we didn't think of before. So it's that aha moment, like, let's see what else we can do. And again, what Tim said is we have to know what the true need is, but our business partners wanted to be a part and they're willing to come to the table. We had more participation this year for Read Across America Week than we've ever had. And it's because we let people record from wherever they wanted to read their stories. So again, we normally think it's great because we go to classrooms and people are there and engaged, but ultimately they were like, oh, this is fun. I can do it in my backyard. I can do it on a hike. We had a firefighter doing it on the back end of his rig, reading a storybook. So we had more participation than we ever had before. So it just gives that level of encouragement to, let's think outside the box.
Thanks, Don and Tim.
And I would upvote those two things so much and add, I think we've realized that as our region's backbone or intermediary organization, we play a translation role between business and schools. And we'll often have, and we had so many amazing business partners over the course of the last year and a half say, like, here, we can offer this as help. And we'd have to go to our school partners and say, we didn't say, here's this thing that they want to do. We said, what do you need? And then we tried to matchmake, and we tried to help translate what a company's offering and what a school needs, and try to find points of connection that make sense for the school. Otherwise, it can feel a little or a lot imposed and not quite like the best fit. And so that's really how I am starting to conceive of our role in that matchmaking.
That's great. Thank you, Amy. Are there other partners in this work that surprised you, that you maybe wouldn't have thought of in a time when you weren't sort of just trying to build something without any instructions? All right. I will take that as a not necessarily answer. I would like to talk a little bit about sustainability, maybe one of our harder questions. All of you touched on it in your presentations, and in some cases I've talked about some great ways to think about sustaining some of the pieces that have been put into place. I'm just wondering if you have other thoughts about that, if there are ways that you've talked about technology that have helped people to understand this as more of a long-term need, or what are the things that you don't have, but that you just want to put out there as things that we all need to be advocating for in terms of sustainability in this area.
This sort of gets to your prior question that we were thinking on and didn't respond to directly about unlikely partners. We're really engaged in conversations now with local health providers. And there's a lot of synergy between like telehealth needs and educational needs. And I'm not quite sure yet what's going to come of that, but there could be shared infrastructure, there could be cost sharing, there could be something there that we're just really starting to scratch the surface of. So that's an unlikely partner. And that, while I don't quite know how to wrap my arms around how that helps address sustainability, I think there's something there when we're thinking outside of just our sectors, and we're thinking just outside of the educational realm, and we're thinking a lot more holistically about how families need and engage with internet, and really thinking, whole person and whole family wise.
That's great. I love hearing how, this has forced us to think in different ways that really do help us come up with potential solutions or ways to make things work better. And that's a great example. Thanks, Amy.
Well, I think we're going to be intentional about ensuring that we have education sessions and preparation for our families, and honoring that we don't know what position or what experience they have when we looked at those 4 peers, because no matter what, our landscape has changed, and likely forever to some level and degree. And we've talked about, like with our programs, we're going to keep some online, we're going to go hybrid, we're going to do all kinds of things. That just means our families still need those skills too. So being extremely intentional to what does that mean? And gosh, Amy, you brought that up, and I can't believe I forgot. One of our health providers was one of our biggest champions when it came to mental health for our teachers. They stepped it up, they helped, and you forget there's so many people all the time going on, but you're right. I mean, our health providers came to the table for us as well. So I think we're going to be very intentional around social emotional supports for families, educators, and so forth. And then, looking to who are those partners that we might not have heard from yet, but still want to be a piece. And I think it's also given us this opportunity to say, look outside the box. There are other answers out there. We just got to be willing to explore. And I think this made us try things, and we tried them because we had to, right? We didn't necessarily get to plan them the way we normally did. So it gave us this excitement around innovation and trying new things.
Great. Thank you, Dawn. It looks like, first of all, I want to just let you all know you may have seen a pop-up poll come onto your screen. And so we're not ending yet, but if you can take a minute to answer some of those questions, they really do help us to think about the way we structure our webinars, and so would really appreciate all of you completing those. And while you do that, we have one other question. from Craig in the Q&A box. As education requires more and more digital tools for learning, we need to push the idea of internet and data plans as part of a comprehensive educational experiences, and that need to be provided to all families to successfully engage digitally in education. Does anyone have great working relationships with providers already, or thoughts about that? You know, it's interesting. The question makes me think of sort of the flip of what, go ahead, Amy, if you want to.
No, please, I'm curious.
Yeah, I was just thinking about sort of the flip of what you said in terms of, you know, these issues are caused by deeper root causes, and we need to address them. And you know, I think sometimes if we think about this is something that everyone should have, then it doesn't become an equity issue anymore. You know,
Right.
if everyone has access, then we don't have to worry about providing. And that doesn't mean there aren't other root causes and issues we still have to address, of course. But some of these things, if we just thought of them as a given, you know, that would help as well.
Yeah, as basic needs, right?
Here in Phoenix, I guess when we talk providers, I'm assuming we're talking Wi-Fi plans, right? Yeah, internet data plans. The city, when we did our focus group, we found out that a lot of our school districts were using the T-Mobile just because of the incentives. They were providing like the device free and the monthly plan at a very reasonable rate for school districts, and they allow for 12 months of purchasing, right? So we went ahead, and when we bought our devices and their Wi-Fi capability, some of our with our tablets and whatnot, we partnered with T-Mobile to align with many of our school districts. But again, all our school districts use different providers. But because T-Mobile had a really good program for our school districts, when we worked with T-Mobile, they gave us that same deal, even though we weren't a school or a school district.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Tim.
You know, I wouldn't offer a great answer to that, except to say it's something that we need to think about more deeply here. The fact of the matter is that broadband for all, however it's done, needs to engage, like we need to engage providers in that conversation, especially in a place like Utah that's very business and profit oriented. If they're not at the table, and if the work that we're doing to get affordable broadband to every family is seen as something other than those things, we're never going to make any headway. So I appreciate that point, Craig.
Yep, this is a conversation for a whole other webinar. Any other thoughts or questions before we close out today? All right, well, go ahead, Amy.
I was just going to thank you and the campaign for organizing this, and the other panelists. I've learned a lot from all of you, and we'll likely be following up with a lot of you. So thank you.
Thank you. I agree. Thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Great. Thank you to both of you. And I would just echo that. Tim. I have learned so much, you know, in this conversation. I thought I knew a lot, and I've learned so much, and it's helped me to really think about issues in a little bit of a different way. So I really appreciate the ways that all of you brought your perspective and the incredible experience and hard work that you've taken to solve some of these problems and help us all think about them in different ways for our families and kids. So thanks to all of you for that. And we will look forward to continuing to learn about this together as we continue these conversations. Some of the upcoming conversations that we have, I did want to just highlight here. Later today, we would love to have you join us for the Kindergarten Exodus, Why, Where, and What We Can Do Now. That will be at 3 p.m. Eastern Time today. Next week, we'll have 2 great sessions, a funder to funder conversation, pandemics, fires, floods, and more, philanthropy response to disasters amidst disasters. That will be in the 10:30 Eastern Time slot. And then at the 3 p.m. time frame, we'll have trauma-informed practice and the construction of the deep reading brain webinar. And then finally, our Crucible of Practice webinars will be back at the beginning of October 12th. And you can join us to learn more about the work happening in Springfield, Massachusetts on October 12th. So we will look forward to seeing all of you at one of our upcoming webinars. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us, for your questions, and have a great afternoon.